What's happening, guys? This is Mike at Mike's Total Dragon Channel. This week brought us a new history of the DC Universe, a book in which they are attempting to document and chart the history of the DC Universe from its creation up to where we're at right now. The creative team on it is Mark Waid, Todd Nauck, Jerry Ordway. It's really strong choices here. Mark Waid is someone who has been at DC for the majority of his career. I believe he has been there since the early 80s. Obviously he's had pit stops at other places, time he spent on indie books here and there, and a brief stint or two at Marvel. But for all intents and purposes, Mark Waid is a DC guy with an incredible amount of knowledge about DC and a fondness for their characters. As he's mentioned many a time, how much he enjoys the legacy characters of DC in their universe. Jerry Ordway is another guy who is a longtime DC artist. He's been there for quite a while as well, and has worked on, basically everything at this point. So I figured it would be fun to go ahead and just read right through this. On the cover we have Dan Moore with the Golden Age Wonder Woman. I always refer to this Wonder Woman as the Golden Age one because this is what they have retconned in the past as being the original Wonder Woman, who was in fact the current Wonder Woman's mother. This would be Queen Hippolyta, ever how it's pronounced, and this is the costume she wore when she was with the Justice Society during World War II. So that's simply why I refer to her as the Golden Age Wonder Woman. Now they have at times revealed it to be Diana herself that was here during World War II, but I'm not sure if that's the direction they're going here, but I'm just going to go ahead and call it Golden Age Wonder Woman, and that this is Diana's mom. So we'll go ahead and turn this and get started. My name is Barry Allen. Once I was the Flash, the fastest man alive. I'm retired now, but in my day I probably saw more of the multiverse, past, present, and future than anyone who ever lived. Along the way, I've also been involved in crisis level events that have at times made history a little malleable, like a story given subtle differences by multiple narrators. That makes me uncomfortable. I prefer my history structured, documented. That's why, as its most travel witness, it is my responsibility to record it. Now, what I like most about this opening page here is I love all these little winks and nods, these little Easter eggs right here that are drawn in Barry's office. You see different props from various DC characters throughout the years. This is kind of similar to that scene from the George Perez scene from Future Imperfect, where it shows the Maestro's trophy room with all the things he's taken from the Marvel characters he's conquered. And in here you see like Wild Dog's mask, Captain Cole's glasses, bottle of Gin Gold that Elongated Man drinks, Green Arrow's bow, Cosmic Rod here. Just a bunch of little fun little Easter eggs that Todd Nauck, I believe this Todd Nauck drew this page, put in there. And now this is the Jerry Ordway section. In the beginning there was the source, the infinite force of creation. Its cosmic agents, celestial beings called the Hands, shaped its energy into the Big Bang that we know as the dawn of time. Perpetua, one of these beings, entrusted the multiverse's three realms, matter, antimatter, and dark matter, to her sons, the Monitor, the Anti-Monitor, and the World Forger, before being banished for attempting to meddle with creation. The Big Bang gave rise to stars, planets, and the endless seven powerful entities who each represented an aspect of the new reality. Among them were destiny, death, and the Dream Lord, master of his realm, the dreaming. At the heart of creation lay the gleaming silver city, fortress for the angels of heaven. There, Lucifer Morningstar lost a war in heaven against his brother, the Archangel Michael. Lucifer and his soldiers were cast into hell, where they were reborn as the first demons. One of the fallen angels, Galad, was transformed by Michael into an instrument of God's wrath, today known as Eclipso. Later stripped of his rank by his successor, the fallen angel Astar, acting as God's instrument of vengeance. Astar is better known as the Spectre. Soon thereafter, two warring factions of immortal forces, the Lords of Order and Chaos, the first sentient races in the universe, were born on the planet Ciela and will continuously play a vital part in shaping the universe. Now, these are obviously the characters from Neil Gaiman's Sandman book, and then, or his Vertigo book, Sandman, and then we see Lucifer Morningstar here, who was in his own Vertigo book. And one of the things I've said before is this is one of the differences between Marvel and DC. DC has a concrete God and a concrete devil. Marvel has basically different levels to gods and different levels to devils, but DC, they have, when you say the devil, they have him. When you say God, they have him. Marvel, they've got a million different guys that carry that title. In time, on a world called Matthias, the first humanoid evolved. They resettled on the planet Oa, considered to be the center of our cosmos. Mastering immortality, they renamed themselves the Guardians of the Universe and set out to impose order on our still cooling macrocosm. The Guardians' first acts were to seal the chaotic magic of the universe within a construct called the Starheart, and to deploy an android law enforcement army known as the Manhunters. Unable to deal effectively with moral complexity, the Manhunters were eventually replaced with the Green Lantern Corps, who funneled the green light of willpower from Oa's central power battery into their energized rings. All was not harmonious on Oa, however. A merciless splinter group who called themselves the Controllers charted their own destiny, establishing a much harsher version of the Lantern Corps, the Dark Stars. The Malthusians split further along gender lines. Its females, designated as Zamorans, left Oa to create their own society. One of the jokes I always make about the Guardians is the fact that they're really not good for anything, because they have so many secrets and so much stuff they've hidden that it always comes back to haunt them and bite them in the face. They have so many, like the Manhunters, they kept those secret. They keep so many secrets from the Green Lanterns that there's always something that they're not telling them, and it always comes back to bite them as some sort of evil they have to fight. Long before Earth's creation, there came a time when the old gods of Ur-Gun died in a sprawling war that destroyed their world. It remains fissioned into two planets, New Genesis and Apocalypse, in a realm outside the multiverse referred to as the Fourth World. The Source granted its residents a form of godhood. Most notable among them were New Genesis' High Father, Isia, and his son, Scott-Free. Darkseid, malevolent ruler of Apocalypse and wielder of the cruelly destructive Omega Force. His sons are Ryan and Calabac. The apocalyptic woman, Big Barda, and the Black Racer, an elemental force in human form who brings death to all he touches. And all these are all Kirby creations. When he first left Marvel and went to DC, this is all him right here. As the Earth started to cool and life began, Yggdrasil, the World Tree, achieved sentience and birthed both the Parliament of Trees and the Green, the force that binds all plant life. In turn, the Parliament created a race of floral elements that would forever protect Earth, swamp things. Soon after, Atlantis arose as Earth's earliest civilization. Although magic was the dominant means of power throughout the continent, its intellectuals developed highly advanced technological wonders at a time when the first Homo sapiens had yet to discover fire. Atlantis' champion was Lord High Mage Aharion, also known as Arion, a follower of the Lords of Order. During his long reign, Arion would sacrifice much of his power to end the Ice Age and to contain his dark twin and mortal enemy, Garin Danuth. Consequently, despite great efforts, Arion was later unable to prevent the great deluge caused by Eclipso to destroy most of the Earth's surface, including Atlantis. The survivors were able to preserve its sole remaining kingdoms, Poseidonus and Tritonius, as they sank to the ocean's floor. Over the ensuing millennia, the Poseidonians maintained their two-legged forms, while the Tritonians evolved into mer-people. Still another offshoot of the Atlanteans fled to the extra-dimensional realm Scartaris, where they established a city of Shambhala. Foremost amongst humanity's primitives was young Anthro, who defended the Bear tribe from raids by marauding cavemen, including Vandal Savage and his Blood tribe. It was the latter who benefited when a radioactive meteor crashed down, imbuing several Cro-Magnons, including Savage and his siblings and Bear tribe leader Clarn, with different forms of immortality. Savage, impervious to mortal harm, would exist perpetually through history, while Clarn would, upon dying, immediately reincarnate in a different body, making him the immortal man. When another Neanderthal man murdered his pregnant wife, her soul and that of her unborn child were brought into the Well of Souls by their patron goddesses, who collected over the centuries the spirits of other women unjustly slain by men. Reincarnated anew as they emerged from the well, these women called themselves the Amazons, and with Hippolyta as their queen, found a society that eventually took root on the island of Themyscira. And I want to say that all of this here, I know George Perez, at the start of his run, touches on all this. So I'm not sure if he's the one who originated this concept, if that's where the Amazons came from or not, but I know it is on the very first page of the first issue that he wrote of Wonder Woman after Crisis. The Rock of Eternity, a dimensional portal through space-time, was built by powerful sorcerers known as the Circle of Eternity as their stronghold to contain the seven deadly sins. Mamarigan, an aboriginal deity of thunder, joined the circle under the honorific Wizard. The Wizard used his abilities to endow slave Tef Adam with the abilities of an African pantheon of gods, renaming him the Mighty Adam. But power corrupted, and in this instance twisted Tef into Black Adam, who murdered the circle. The Wizard was the sole survivor. By then, the start of modern civilization as we know it had already begun in Sumer, in the ancient Near East. With the help of a time traveler from our era, an agent of order named Nabu the Wise refashioned an extraterrestrial artifact into the scarab of Ka-F-Re in a failed attempt to break the power of Vandal Savage. Badly wounded, Nabu put himself in a healing trance inside of a pyramid in Chides Valley of Ur. I'm sure I just butchered that all to hell. Zavaya, princess of an ancient kingdom on the African island of Madagascar, died and would later be reincarnated as Nubia of the Amazons. In the Himalayas, the Asian goddess Ramakrishna created the hidden paradise of Nanda Parbat, a place of healing and spiritual enlightenment. Kartar Deathbringer and Shara served an ancient force of evil before being redeemed and reincarnated as humans. Prince Khufu, Mat Qatar, and Sha'ara of the planet Thanagar. Upon their death, they began a millennia-long chain of reincarnation across many worlds. The Star Heart fell in ancient China, where it was carved into a magical lamp that made its way into the hands of Kublai Khan, then Marco Polo, before beginning its long journey towards North America. The 6th century AD was a significant time both in history and in heroic legend. The magician Merlin drafted his Eternity Book, an immeasurably powerful magic tome, while King Arthur assembled his Knights of the Round Table. Now this couple here would in turn become Hawkman and Hawkgirl. They would just be reincarnated throughout time, always assuming those forms as heroes and always finding each other. Merlin, rescued from a trap by the knight Sir Justin, rewarded Justin by enchanting his armor and sword and giving wings to his steed, Victory. Shortly thereafter, as the Shining Knight, Justin's final battle left him entombed in ice for the next 14 centuries. Not long after, Merlin anointed a second Shining Knight who championed the people of their kingdom. Nimue Nwudu, Morgan Le Fay, and Viviana, the Lady of the Lake, were sisters descended from the Elder Folk, an offshoot of an Atlantean race later known as Homo Magi. Nimue took the name Madame Xanadu in the last days of Camelot to save the Eternity Book from Le Fay. Merlin bound her half-brother, the demon Etrigan, to a simple peasant named Jason Blood, who became the book's immortal guardian. Now this is a very interesting part right here. In the DC universe, the magic users are of a separate race of people. They are not Homo sapiens. The magic users are descended from Homo Magi. So that's pretty interesting. That's cool. Humanity was becoming a race of explorers. The Viking prince sailed the unknown seas in search of high adventure. Years later, Vikings exploring America rescued Eirik, son of Thunder, and brought him back to Europe, where he became a swashbuckling adventurer. The Demon Knights assembled as a crew of warriors defending early Europe. Among them were Etrigan, Madame Xanadu, Vandal Savage, Shining Knight, Horsewoman, Aljabar, and the Themyscirian exile, Exoristos. Now this was a New 52 book, The Demon Knights. The X element was discovered on Apocalypse. Metron, keeper of all knowledge, used it to create his space-time spanning Mobius chair in the teleportation system known as the Boom Tube. This is a Todd Knock page right here. I can tell by the faces. In the deserts of Arabia, a child whose name has been lost to the ages was born of nomads. Becoming a physician, he discovered the Lazarus pits, which could prolong life and resurrect the dead. Over the centuries, he built a criminal eco-terrorism organization and adopted the name Ra's al Ghul, Arabic for the demon's head. Within the demon cabal were several factions, most notably the League of Assassins, as well as a splinter group called the League of Shadows. Around this time, deep within the African Veldt, a band of guerrillas was hit by an extra-dimensional power that granted them a higher form of sentience. The now hyper-intelligent apes built a futuristic habitat called Gorilla City and kept it hidden for centuries with their psychic powers. John and Justin Valor, the heroic black-powered son, sailed the seas, as did the Caribbean's Captain Fear. Andrew Bennett, a minor English nobleman, was cursed with vampirism, yet for the next 400 years defended humanity against the cult of the Blood-Red Moon. In a dark part of London, Richard Swift endured a ritual that caused him to absorb a mysterious and magical shadow power. Under several aliases, including the Shade, he traveled the world, sometimes as a hero, sometimes as a villain. Frankenstein's monster, who later took the name of his creator, escaped captivity. Decades later, his nomadic existence eventually led him to join the Superhuman Advanced Defense Executive. So he was a New 52 book as well, and he was a member of Shade. Not to be confused with this Shade. In America during the Revolutionary War and its aftermath, the legends of Tomahawk, his partners Dan Hunter and Miss Liberty, and Tomahawk's Rangers rang inspirationally across the frontier. Termanian alien crash landed on a plantation in the American South in the early 1800s. Stranded but gifted with great powers in a slow to aging process, he kept his true identity a secret for centuries before becoming the hero known as Icon. Max Crandall was granted superhuman speed by a Blackfoot shaman. He used his skills to protect natives and settlers from one another as Aweto, or as he was better known, Windrunner, today called Max Mercury. See, now they are incorporating Icon, who was a part of the Milestone imprint. They're incorporating his story into the DC universe proper. So I didn't know they had done that. That's interesting. So I guess I wonder if they do that with Icon, will they do the same with Hardware, Static, and some of the other Milestone characters? As pioneers pushed to claim homesteads across the western United States, might too often made right when backed by evil intent and a Colt 45. Fortunately, this Wild West was awash with gunslingers who fought for law and order. Jonah Hex, Bat Lash, Johnny Thunder, the Texas Ranger Jack Woods, El Diablo, the Wyoming Kid, Powwow Smith, Ki Wo Na Te, Nighthawk, Cinnamon, and the Golden Arrow. These two were revealed to be reincarnations of the Hawkeye, or not Hawkeye, Hawkman and Hawkgirl, Carter Hall, Sierra. No amount of heroic spirit, however, could have prevented World War I. During this brutal conflict, one pilot stood out from the others due to his unimpeachable sense of honor. Germany's Reichsmeister Hans von Hammer, more commonly known as the Enemy Ace. Following the war, a former spy turned big game hunter earned fame as Congo Bill Glenmorgan in his adopted home of Africa. In an effort to kidnap and control Death of the Endless, the wealthy Roderick Burgess instead captured Dream, stripping him of several artifacts that would become significant in heroic legend. In the Valley of Un, the archaeologist Sven Nelson was accidentally killed while awakening the slumbering Nabu. In penance, Nabu made Sven's son, Kent Nelson, his disciple in the magical arts. Osgood Ormsby, an orphan raised by the mystic cult known as the Seven, began his career in the 1930s as a supernatural detective under the name Dr. Richard Occult. In one early adventure, Occult donned a red suit and cloak, making him the century's first superhero. We have a little Siegel and Schuster building, 1935 right here, so a little wink and a nod to Siegel and Schuster. Throughout the early 1940s, others quickly followed in a cascade of costumes and masks, played by cryptic nightmares alluding to the captive dream. New York playboy Wesley Dodds became the Sandman. Dodds also bankrolled the resistance efforts of Poland's Janusz Black Hawk Prohaska and his Black Hawk Squadron, who fought the rising Nazi menace, as did teenager aviator Hop Harrigan. Ted Knight, whose gravity rod harnessed the power of the celestial firmament, became Starman. Jim Barr took flight as Bullet Man. Joan Dale transformed into Miss America. Alan Armstrong fought saboteurs as Spy Smasher. Dan Garrett, wielding the scarab of Ka F. Ree, became the first of several crime fighters to bear the name Blue Beetle. They mentioned Wesley Dodds right here as the Sandman. Really, really great book to read is Sandman Mystery Theater. It was a Vertigo book, and each storyline is only 4 issues. So you're not just a lot of books that you don't have a huge, overwhelming storyline that happens. You know, you've got four issues, tell the story, then on to the next story, on to the next story. Sandman Mystery Theater, I highly, highly recommend it. Great book, underrated classic. In 1940, at the suggestion of President Roosevelt, several new heroes, along with Sandman, joined together to create the Justice Society of America. Bodybuilder Al Pratt used his strength and later super strength as the Atom. Jay Garritt was the Flash, then the fastest man alive. Alan Scott forged a ring from the Starheart lamp to become the Green Lantern. Rex Tyler, using a strength-enhancing drug called Miracle Co., took the name Our Man. Kent Nelson became the Eldritch Sorcerer, Dr. Fate. Joining them were murdered police detective Jim Corrigan, who was resurrected by the Spectre to serve as his earthly host. Kufu Kantar, who was newly reincarnated as Hawkman, alongside Shiera, who soon became Hawkgirl. And in time, Johnny Thunder, who spoke the magic word, "Say you," to command the Thunderbolt Genie. Alongside such heroes as Dr. Midnight, Mr. Terrific, Amazing Man, and Wildcat, the JSA battled not only the Axis Menace, but a rising tide of supervillains on both Warfront and American soil. Queen Hippolyta joined them in the guise of Wonder Woman. Brutes like Solomon Grundy, the Nazi superhuman Baron Blitzkrieg, magic wielders like Wotan, Red Lantern, and Johnny Sorrow, and masterminds such as Brainwave were only some of the many evildoers who threatened Earth's safety. It's another Todd Knock double page here. The Society wasn't America's only band of heroes. Crimson Avenger and Wing, a time-displaced Green Arrow and Speedy, the reawakened Shining Knight, the Vigilante, the Star-Spangled Kid, and Stripesy united as the Seven Soldiers of Victory. They disappeared without a trace shortly after the war's end during their battle with a villain known as Nebula Man, which resulted in the death of Wing, only to resurface decades later, unaged. Also time lost and forgotten for years were many costumed assistants and sidekicks, abducted throughout the years by the evil Childminder. Only recently have they and their contributions been returned to time and memory. And this is just a big list of all these recent characters, sidekicks, kid heroes. This was a mini-series in itself that I think Jeff Johns did, the Stargirl mini-series with Todd Knock doing the artwork. Government-sponsored heroes battle for democracy too. To the Allied troops in the European theater, Project M was better known as the original Creature Commandos. Wolfman Warren Griffith, Lucky Taylor, Vampire Vincent Velcro, Dr. Medusa, and G.I. Robot. Meanwhile, on the home front, old heroes like Manhunter, the Guardian, and Sargon the Sorcerer fought for justice. Uncle Sam and Our Man, however, elected to pull together a team for a doomed attempt to turn back the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor. Together, Neon the Unknown, Invisible Justice, Magno, Miss America, and the Red Torpedo were the freedom fighters. Though they were badly defeated, Uncle Sam was undeterred, soon assembling a second, more successful incarnation of the team, consisting of Doll Man, Human Bomb, Ray, Uncle Sam, Black Condor, and Phantom Lady. In the wake of Pearl Harbor, the Justice Society's battle with Per Degaton triggered the creation of an adjunct group, the All-Star Squadron. Founding members of the All-Stars included several JS members, as well as Liberty Bell, Robot Man, and Johnny Quick. Despite their might, however, the war lingered. Axis-controlled territories were protected by an anti-magic spell created by the Spirit of Destiny and the Holy Grail. Not long after his debut, Nazis killed TNT, leaving his partner, Dynamite, to join the Young All-Stars with fellow teen heroes Fury, Iron Monroe, Flying Fox, Tsunami, and Neptune Perkins. Costume fighters were hardly the only heroes of the World War, rampaging through Europe and beyond. The Unknown Soldier used his disguise skills to infiltrate enemy territory. Sergeant Frank Rock and Easy Company were deservedly the most famous of America's fighting soldiers. A young spy known as Mademoiselle Marie was a leader in the French resistance. Ben Hunter led the Hellcats, a special forces group of hardened criminals. Ulysses Hazard was a one-man commando unit codenamed Gravedigger. Captain Rip Carter led 4 resourceful boys, Alfie Twidget, Andre Chavard, Daniel Brooklyn Turpin, and Jan Hansen, against Nazi tyranny as the Boy Commandos. Guided by the ghosts of his namesake, Civil War ancestor Sergeant Jeb Stewart and his crew, Arch Asher, Rick Rawlins, and Slim Stryker commanded the Hornet tank. Allied High Command formed a special detached service unit codenamed the Losers, consisting of Captain William Storm, Lieutenant Johnny Cloud, Norwegian resistance fighter Ona Thompson, Gunner Sarge Pooch. I want to say the Boy Commandos are a Jack Kirby creation as well. He always did have Kirby always did have a thing for kid groups. Newsboy Legion, Boy Commandos, Dingbats. Back home, the original Mr. Miracle assembled the Justice Society Dark, a conclave of magic users including Dr. Occult, Dr. Fate, the Sorcerer Zatara, and the Blue Beetle. Facing a threat that would last decades, they used magic to permanently slow their own aging. Captain Richard Montgomery Flagg was asked to command the Army's most expendable soldiers as Squadron S, which became nicknamed the Suicide Squadron, among the first to explore the mysterious Dinosaur Island. Later, Flagg's son, Richard Rogers Flagg, headed its next iteration, Task Force X, the Suicide Squad. Post-war, martial artist Diana Drake joined the Justice Society as Black Canary, but her tenure was cut short when the JSA disbanded under government pressure. Unbeknownst to the public, a good number of its members subsequently undertook missions in secret, culminating in an adventure in another realm that extended their lifespans greatly, at the cost of missing out on decades of existence on Earth. In their place, a short-lived Justice Alliance formed under the leadership of the mutant Captain Comet. Despite their valor, the team of Prince Rahman, Automan, Tiger Man, and Kongorilla was unable to fill the void left by the JSA. Decades after the Justice Society vanished, the U.S. government reached out in desperation to several accomplished scientists and financiers in hopes of actively creating new heroes. Among those willing to participate were Dr. Niles Cauldron, Will Magnus, Professor Martin Stein, and Simon Stagg. This arrangement will retroactively be deemed the Superman Project Phase 1, and its results would be significant in the years to come. In a small laboratory in Colorado, Dr. Mark Saul Airedale tested his teleportation ray for the first time. Inadvertently, he wrenched through space and time a Martian named John Johns. While light years from Earth, a distant planet called Krypton exploded, a tiny escape craft bearing a very special infant passenger. And that is the wrap for the end of Book 1. And then we see here the list of creators, and then there's an acknowledgement to Mark Wolfman and George Perez, who did a book similar to this in the 80s. And then after that, you have New History of the DC Universe Timeline, based on research by Mark Waid and Dave Wilgaz. And here are the books and the issues which they got these events from. So if you wanted to find out more about them, these would be the corresponding books that you could look up to read about if you would like to know more, as the saying goes. A lot of in-depth work right here. Definitely a lot of time put into this. As I said before, Mark Waid is someone who has a head for continuity, so having him on this book is definitely the right choice. But that is New History of the DC Universe, issue number 1, and I really enjoyed this book. Initially, I kind of didn't think I was going to like it because I felt like DC changes their continuity so much. What's the point of even putting this out? But I really did like the way they have Barry Allen being the one to log all this. That makes sense with as much ties he has to time travel and the multiverse and the history of the DC universe. So he's the perfect fit to be the narrator for this book. But this is the first issue, and I really recommend you pick this up if you're someone who is new to DC. This will give you kind of a framework of how things work, and it can kind of steer you in a direction if you're interested in learning more. And if you're someone who is a long-time reader, then this will give you a lot of things that you can remember, and it will get you thinking about characters that you hadn't seen or thought about in quite a while. So, new history of the DC Universe. Recommend. Check it out next time you're at your shop. Pick yourself up a copy. Put it on your pull list. Let your local shop owner know that you're interested in reading this. So that is it. That is a wrap. So till next time, we will talk to you guys later. Have a good night, and bye-bye.